He ruled the underworld with silence and steel. She disappeared 5 years ago without a word. Now she's back, with 3 reasons he never knew existed. When a crime lord's past walks through the door holding his future, every empire has a price. And tonight, his just became unmeasurable. This is the story of the man who had everything, until he realized what he'd lost. Welcome to a love that survived secrets, silence, and the weight of a crown made of shadows. Hello, everyone. I'm back with another Afro-Korean story that will stay with you long after it ends. Today's tale is about secrets, second chances, and a love powerful enough to shake an empire. But before we dive in, please subscribe and help us reach 1,000 subscribers so we can keep bringing you stories you've never seen anywhere else. Now, let's begin. The restaurant was the kind of place where silence cost more than noise. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen tears above tables draped in white linen, and every whisper seemed to carry the weight of secrets worth keeping. Jinwoo Park sat across from his fiancée, her diamond ring catching light like a promise he wasn't sure he could keep when the door opened and his world stopped breathing. He didn't need to turn around. He felt her before he saw her, the way you feel a storm coming before the first drop of rain. 5 years. 5 years since Amara had walked out of his life without explanation, without goodbye, without anything but the empty space where her laughter used to live. He'd searched for her. God, how he'd searched. Every contact, every favor owed, every thread of his underground empire pulled taut, trying to find the woman who'd simply vanished like smoke through his fingers. And now she was here. His fiancée, Yuna, was still talking about wedding venues, her voice a pleasant hum he could no longer hear. Jinwoo's eyes found Amara across the dining room, and the air between them became electric, dangerous, alive. She was more beautiful than his memory had allowed. Her skin still glowed like warm amber in candlelight. Her natural hair framed her face in soft coils, and she moved with that same graceful confidence that had first undone him 7 years ago. But it wasn't Amara who made his heart stop. It was the 3 children holding her hands, triplets, no older than 5. 2 boys and a girl dressed in matching outfits, their small faces turned up toward their mother with absolute trust. And when one of the boys looked across the restaurant, Jinwoo saw his own eyes staring back at him. Dark, intense, unmistakable. The wine glass in his hand trembled. Jinwoo. Yuna's voice cut through the roaring in his ears. Are you all right? He couldn't answer, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but watch as Amara's eyes finally met his across the space that separated them. A space that suddenly felt like an ocean and a heartbeat all at once. Her expression didn't change. She didn't gasp or freeze or run. She simply looked at him with those warm brown eyes that had once seen past the crime lord to the man underneath. And in that look, he saw everything. The truth she'd carried alone, the choice she'd made to disappear, the life she'd built without him, and the 3 reasons she'd had to do it all. "Mommy, I'm hungry," the little girl said, tugging on Amara's dress. Amara's lips curved into a small smile. Not for him, never for him anymore, but for her daughter, their daughter. "I know, baby. Let's get you seated." The hostess led them to a table on the opposite side of the restaurant, but it might as well have been next door. Jinwoo could feel every step Amara took, could sense the careful way she avoided looking at him again, could see how one of the boys kept glancing over with curious eyes that mirrored his own. Jinwoo. Yuna's hand touched his, cool and perfectly manicured. "You look like you've seen a ghost." He had. 3 ghosts. 3 small souls he'd never known existed. His mind raced through the timeline. 5 years since Amara left. The children looked about 5 years old, which meant she'd known. She'd known she was carrying his children, and had chosen to disappear rather than tell him. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife his enemies had ever turned on him. But underneath the anger was something worse. Understanding. Because he knew what he was. Knew what his world demanded. Knew that the man who ruled the Korean underground with an iron fist and a reputation for ruthlessness was not a man who got to have a family. Not a real one. Not one that wasn't stained by blood and violence and the constant shadow of death. She'd protected them. From him. From his world. From everything he touched that turned dark. And he couldn't even hate her for it. "I need a moment," Jinwoo said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. He stood, his tall frame drawing immediate attention from the bodyguards stationed discreetly around the restaurant. His men, always watching, always ready. "Where are you going?" Yuna asked, concern creasing her perfect features. "Just the restroom. I'll be right back." It was a lie. He was walking toward the table where Amara sat with their children, drawn by a force stronger than reason, stronger than the empire he'd built, stronger than every wall he'd constructed around his heart. She saw him coming. He watched her shoulders tense, watched her lean down to whisper something to the children, watched her stand to meet him before he could reach the table. They faced each other in the space between their separate lives. "Jinwoo," she said softly, and hearing his name in her voice again was like coming home and being exiled all at once. "Amara." His hands clenched at his sides, fighting the urge to touch her, to confirm she was real. "We need to talk. Not here, not now. Then when?" His voice dropped to the dangerous whisper his enemies knew to fear. "After another 5 years?" Something flickered in her eyes. Pain, regret, determination. "I did what I had to do." "You took my children." The words came out broken, raw. "You took my children and you ran." "I saved them," she corrected, her voice steady despite the emotion swimming in her gaze. "From your world. From what loving you would have cost them." One of the boys called out, "Mommy?" Amara's expression softened instantly, all her attention turning to her son. Their son. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's coming." She looked back at Jinwoo, and in that moment, he saw the woman he'd loved, and the mother she'd become, and he understood that she would burn down his entire empire to keep those children safe. "Tomorrow," she said quietly. "Lincoln Park, 2 p.m., come alone." "Amara." "Alone, Jinwoo. Or I disappear again, and this time, you'll never find us." She walked back to the table before he could respond, scooping the little girl into her arms and pressing a kiss to her forehead. The boys flanked her like small guardians, and Jinwoo watched his family, a family he'd never known, sit down to dinner without him. When he returned to his own table, Yuna was watching him with questions in her eyes. Who was that woman? Jinwoo picked up his wineglass, his hand steady now despite the chaos inside him. "Someone I used to know. She looked at you like you were more than that." He didn't answer, couldn't answer, because Amara had looked at him like he was everything and nothing all at once. The man she'd loved and the monster she'd fled from. And somewhere between those two truths, he would have to find a way forward, because those children had his eyes. And a man like him didn't walk away from blood, not even when walking toward it might destroy everything. Jinwoo didn't sleep that night. He stood on the balcony of his penthouse, the city sprawling below him like a kingdom of light and shadow, and tried to reconcile the man he'd become with the father he'd never known he was. Behind him, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Yuna slept in his bed, innocent, unburdened by the weight of his past. She fit perfectly into his world of carefully orchestrated appearances, the daughter of a powerful businessman, beautiful, poised, exactly what a man in his position was supposed to want. But she wasn't Amara. No one had ever been Amara. He'd met her 7 years ago at a charity gala he'd attended to maintain appearances, the respectable businessman facade that hid the empire of fear beneath. She'd been serving champagne, a college student working her way through graduate school, and when she'd smiled at him, something in his chest had cracked open. She hadn't known who he was, what he was. She'd just seen a man in an expensive suit who looked lonely despite being surrounded by people. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," she'd said, her voice warm with amusement. "Is it that obvious?" Only to someone who feels the same way. They talked for 3 hours. About books and dreams and the kind of life worth living. She'd made him laugh. Actually laugh. Not the cold smile he wore like armor. And when the night ended, he'd known he was in trouble. Because men like him didn't get to fall in love. But he'd fallen anyway. For 2 years, they'd built something beautiful in the spaces between his darkness. She'd never asked too many questions about his business, and he'd never volunteered the truth. She'd brought light into his shadows, softness into his steel, and for the first time in his life, he'd imagined something different. Then she'd disappeared. No note, no explanation, no trace. One day she was there, laughing in his kitchen while making breakfast, and the next, she was gone. Her apartment emptied, her phone disconnected, every connection severed like she'd never existed. He'd torn the city apart looking for her, called in every favor, threatened every contact, used every resource his organization possessed. But Amara had vanished completely, as if she'd never been real at all. And now he knew why. She'd been pregnant, with triplets, his children. The rage that swept through him was cold and calculating, the kind of anger that had built his empire, but underneath it was something more painful. Grief. Grief for the 5 years he'd missed. First steps and first words and first everything. Birthdays and bedtimes and all the small moments that made a life. She'd stolen that from him. But she'd also saved them. His phone buzzed. A message from his second-in-command, Marcus. Ran the woman's info. Amara Johnson. Living in Riverside under her real name. No aliases. Works as a pediatric nurse. Clean record. Want me to dig deeper? Jinwoo's jaw clenched. Of course she'd become a nurse. Of course she spent her days healing children. That was who Amara was. Someone who made the world softer, kinder, better. Everything he wasn't. He typed back. No. Leave it. Boss? I said leave it. That's an order. He could handle this himself. Had to handle this himself. Because this wasn't about his organization or his power. This was about 3 children who shared his blood and a woman who'd loved him enough to run. The sun rose slowly over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber, colors that reminded him of Amara's skin, of the way she'd looked in morning light, soft and warm and safe. Safe. Until him. At 1 p.m., he dismissed his bodyguards for the afternoon. An unprecedented move that had Marcus calling immediately. Boss, you can't go unprotected. The Italians are still... I'll be fine for a few hours. Jinwoo. Marcus rarely used his first name. What's going on? Something I should have handled 5 years ago. He hung up before Marcus could argue further. Lincoln Park at 2 p.m. was exactly the kind of neutral ground Amara would choose. Public enough to be safe, open enough to see threats coming, family-friendly enough to feel normal. When Jinwoo arrived, 15 minutes early because old habits died hard, he spotted her immediately. She sat on a bench near the playground, watching the triplets play. The 2 boys raced each other down the slide, while the little girl attempted the monkey bars with fierce determination. Amara's entire being was focused on them, her love visible in every watchful glance, every encouraging smile. This was the life she'd chosen, the life she'd built without him. And it was beautiful. He approached slowly, giving her time to see him coming. When she looked up, her expression was carefully neutral, but he saw the tension in her shoulders, the protective instinct that made her shift slightly toward her children. Thank you for coming, she said as he sat down, not too close. leaving space between them like a buffer zone. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might bring an army. I came alone, like you asked. Her eyes searched his face, looking for something, truth, maybe, or danger, or the man she used to know beneath the monster he'd become. They don't know who you are, what you are. I'd like to keep it that way. And how long did you plan to keep it that way? Forever? If I could. Her voice was steady, but he heard the tremor underneath. Jinwoo, they're happy. They're safe. They have a normal life. Without their father. With a father who can't be part of their world without destroying it. The words hit like bullets. Clean, precise. Devastating. You didn't give me a choice, he said quietly. I gave them a choice. Between a father who rules through fear and a childhood without shadows. She turned to look at him fully now, and he saw the woman who'd loved him fighting with the mother who would die for her children. Tell me I was wrong. Tell me that your life is safe for children. Tell me that loving you doesn't come with a target on their backs. He couldn't, because everything she said was true. They have my eyes, he said instead, watching the little girl finally make it across the monkey bars, her face lighting up with triumph. They have more than that. David has your focus. Michael has your intensity. Arya has your determination. Amara's voice softened. They're so much like you, it terrifies me. What are their full names? She hesitated, then, David Jin Johnson, Michael Jin Johnson, Arya Jin Johnson. Jin. She'd given them his name, hidden in the middle where the world wouldn't see it, but there, a piece of him embedded in their identity. You gave them my name, he breathed. I gave them their father's name, even if they could never know him. One of the boys, David, he now knew, looked over and saw Jinwoo sitting with their mother. The child's eyes narrowed with the same analytical assessment Jinwoo used in business negotiations, and then he started walking over. Amara, Jinwoo started. Just follow my lead, she whispered urgently. David stopped in front of them, small but fearless. Who are you? Jinwoo looked at his son, and felt something fundamental shift inside him. I'm a friend of your mother's. Mommy doesn't have friends who wear suits like that. Smart. The boy was smart. David, this is Mr. Park, Amara interjected smoothly. We knew each other a long time ago. From before us? Yes, sweetheart. From before you. David studied Jinwoo with an intensity that was mirror-like and unsettling. You look sad. Jinwoo's throat tightened. Do I? Grown-ups think kids don't notice. But we do. Then, with the casual cruelty of childish honesty, you have eyes like mine. The world stopped. Amara's hand found his, a brief, steadying touch. Coincidence, baby. Lots of people have dark eyes. But David wasn't convinced. He looked between them, processing, calculating, and Jinwoo saw the exact moment his son began to suspect something deeper. David! Michael called from the playground. Come help me with Arya. The spell broke. David turned and ran back to his siblings, but he glanced over his shoulder once, a look that said this conversation wasn't over. He's sharp, Jinwoo said, his voice rough. They all are. Which is why we can't. Amara pulled her hand back, creating distance again. Jinwoo, I don't know what you want from this. But they can't be part of your world. They're already part of my world. They're my blood. Blood isn't enough when it's covered in darkness. He turned to face her fully. What if I walked away? From all of it? You can't. Men like you don't walk away. The Empire doesn't let you go, you know that. She was right. He'd seen too much, done too much, knew too much. The organization would never let him simply leave. He was too valuable, too dangerous, too deeply embedded. Retirement in his world came with a bullet or a prison cell. Then what do you want from me? He asked, To pretend I never saw them? To act like I don't know I have children? I want you to let them be children. To grow up without looking over their shoulders, without bodyguards and bulletproof cars, without nightmares about what their father does in the dark. And what about what I want? Her eyes glistened. What you want stopped mattering the moment you chose that life. The moment you chose power over everything else. I never chose it over you. But you chose it. And you can't unchose it, Jinwoo. That's the truth you won't face. Arya's laughter rang across the playground. Pure, innocent, untouched by anything cruel. And Jinwoo understood that Amara had given his children something he never had, the chance to be innocent. I want to know them, he said finally. Jinwoo, not as their father, not yet, maybe not ever, but I want to know them. Let me do that. Please. She studied him for a long moment, war playing out across her features. Then, 1 day a week, supervised. The moment I think it's dangerous, we're gone again. Done. And Yuna? His fiancée's name hung between them like an accusation. What about her? Does she know? No. Will you tell her? He thought about Yuna, about the life they were supposed to build, the merger of families, the strategic alliance, the perfect facade. I don't know. Then figure it out, because I won't let your double life destroy what I've built for them. She stood, calling to the children. They came running, 3 small hurricanes of energy and joy, and Jinwoo watched them pile around their mother like she was their whole world. Because she was. Say goodbye to Mr. Park, Amara instructed. They chorused their goodbyes, Arya with a shy wave, Michael with a solemn nod, David with those knowing eyes that saw too much. And then they were gone, walking back toward a life he wasn't part of, leaving him alone on a park bench with the weight of everything he'd lost and everything he might never have. His phone buzzed. Yuna. Dinner tonight? Haven't seen you all day. Jinwoo stared at the message, then at the retreating figures of his children. He'd built an empire on fear and control, but right now, he had neither. And for the first time in his life, he didn't know what move to make. The restaurant incident had consequences. Jinwoo learned this 3 days later when Yuna's father requested an emergency meeting, the kind that wasn't really a request. Richard Chen was old-school organized crime masquerading as legitimate business, and his daughter's engagement to Jinwoo was about consolidating power, not love. They met at Chen's private club, all mahogany and cigar smoke, and men who'd killed with handshakes and smiles. My daughter says you were distracted at dinner, Chen began without preamble. That you spoke to another woman. That you looked at her like the world was ending. Jinwoo kept his expression neutral. An old acquaintance, nothing more. Nothing more. Chen leaned back in his leather chair, studying him. Jinwoo, we've known each other for 15 years. I've watched you build your empire from nothing. You don't get distracted. You don't lose focus. You certainly don't look at anyone like they matter more than your ambitions. It was nothing. Don't insult my intelligence. Chen's voice hardened. Who is she? Silence stretched between them, the dangerous kind that preceded violence or understanding. Jinwoo calculated his options. Chen's organization was powerful, but not as powerful as his own. A war between them would be costly, bloody, and ultimately pointless. But lying to Chen about Amara felt like betraying her all over again. Someone from before, Jinwoo said finally. Someone I cared about. She disappeared 5 years ago. And now she's back. Yes. With children, Yuna said. 3 of them. Jinwoo's jaw tightened. So Yuna had noticed more than she'd revealed. Yes. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then surprisingly, are they yours? The question hung in the air like a sword. Yes. Chen whistled low. That complicates things. It doesn't have to. My engagement to Yuna still stands. This woman, she wants nothing to do with my world. She made that clear. But you want something to do with hers. It wasn't a question. Jinwoo met Chen's gaze directly. They're my blood. I can't pretend they don't exist. Can't or won't. Both. Chen stood, pacing to the window that overlooked the city. The same city they'd both carved into territories, both ruled from shadows. You know what I'm going to say. That I need to choose. That I can't have both worlds. That having children makes you weak, makes you vulnerable, makes you a target. Chen turned back to face him. You remember what happened to Martinez? The moment his enemies found out about his daughter, she became leverage. They took her, tortured her, sent him pieces of her until he gave them everything they wanted. I remember. Everyone in their world remembered. It was a cautionary tale told to keep people like them from having families. And you're willing to risk that? For children you didn't even know existed 3 days ago? They existed whether I knew it or not. That doesn't change because it's inconvenient. Chen studied him with something like respect. You've changed. The Jinwoo Park I knew 10 years ago would have walked away, would have paid the woman to disappear again, and never looked back. Maybe that Jinwoo died when he saw his children's faces. Then you're a fool, because that Jinwoo survived. This new one? Chen shook his head. Sentiment is poison in our business. Then I'll drink the poison. And what about my daughter? The question Jinwoo had been avoiding. Yuna deserves better than a husband who loves someone else. Yuna deserves the alliance we agreed on. The merger of our territories, our resources, our power. Chen's voice went cold. You don't get to back out because an old girlfriend showed up with convenient children. Convenient? Jinwoo stood, anger flashing. My children are not a convenience. They're a liability, a weakness, a vulnerability that every one of your enemies will exploit. Chen stepped closer. You want to know them? Fine. Keep them secret. Set them up somewhere safe with their mother. Visit occasionally. Play the concerned benefactor. But you don't blow up a multi-million-dollar alliance for sentimentality. It's not sentimentality. It's... What? Love? Chen laughed. But it was ugly. You gave up love when you chose this life. We all did. That was the price, and you paid it willingly. Maybe I want a refund. The words came out before Jinwoo could stop them, and he saw Chen's expression shift from annoyed to dangerous. There are no refunds in our world, only exits. And you know what exits look like. Death or betrayal. Those were the only ways out. I'm not saying I want out, Jinwoo clarified. I'm saying I want both. You can't have both. No one can have both. That's the fundamental rule. Then maybe it's time to change the rules. Chen stared at him for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. Bring her in. Confusion flickered through Jinwoo. Bring who? The door opened, and Yuna walked in, still wearing her office clothes, looking between her father and her fiancée with guarded eyes. Tell him, Chen ordered his daughter. Yuna took a breath. I know about the woman, about the children. I've known since the restaurant. Jinwoo felt the ground shift beneath him. Yuna, and I'm willing to look past it. Affairs happen. Secret children happen. I'm not naive enough to think our marriage is about love. Her voice was steady, almost detached. But I won't be humiliated. I won't be second choice. If you marry me, you cut them off completely. No contact, no support beyond financial. They disappear from your life as thoroughly as if they never existed. I can't do that. Then we have a problem. Chen stepped forward. Because here's what's going to happen if you walk away from this engagement. I will take it as a declaration of war. And the first casualties of that war will be a pediatric nurse in Riverside and her 3 children. The threat landed like a physical blow. Jinwoo's hands clenched into fists. You touch them, and I will burn your entire organization to the ground. Then we have mutually assured destruction. Chen smiled coldly. Or you could make the smart choice. Marry my daughter. Maintain the alliance. Keep your ex-girlfriend and her children alive by staying away from them. It was a trap with walls made of love and lined with razors. Either choice would destroy something, his family or his empire, Amara or his power, the children he'd just found, or everything he'd built. You're asking me to choose, Jinwoo said slowly. I'm telling you what the choice is. You chose this life a long time ago, Jinwoo, long before you knew those children existed. Now you get to live with that choice. Yuna watched him with eyes that held no warmth, no understanding, just cold calculation. She was her father's daughter, pragmatic, strategic, untouched by anything resembling sentiment. She would never look at their children the way Amara did, would never sacrifice everything to keep them safe, would never choose them over power, because she was exactly like him, or like who he used to be. I need time, Jinwoo said. You have until the engagement party next week, Chen replied. Either you show up with my daughter on your arm, or you show up to a war you can't win. Dad, Yuna started. No. Chen silenced her with a look. He needs to understand what's at stake. What's always been at stake. He turned back to Jinwoo. You built an empire on sacrifice. On being willing to give up everything soft and human for power. Don't tell me you've suddenly developed a conscience now. But that was exactly what had happened. Seeing David, Michael, and Arya, seeing himself reflected in their eyes, seeing the life Amara had built for them, had cracked something open inside him that years of violence and control had sealed shut. He'd become human again. And in their world, humanity was fatal. Jinwoo walked out of the meeting without another word. His bodyguards fell into step behind him, silent shadows that followed him back to his car. Marcus was waiting, reading his expression instantly. That bad? Worse. What do you need? Jinwoo looked out at the city, his city, built on fear and respect, and the carefully maintained illusion of invincibility. He'd sacrificed everything for this kingdom of shadows. But kingdoms meant nothing when you had no one to share them with. I need options, he said finally. Ways to protect people from my own world. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, Boss, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, I'm not thinking anything yet. Just gathering information. Information for what? Jinwoo closed his eyes, seeing Arya's smile, David's knowing eyes, Michael's quiet intensity, seeing Amara watching them with fierce, protective love. For how to be a father without getting my children killed. Marcus let out a slow breath. That's not really possible in our line of work. Then I need to find a way to make it possible. And if you can't? Jinwoo opened his eyes, decision crystallizing. Then I need to find a way out. Out? Marcus's voice went sharp. Boss, there is no out. You know that. The only people who leave our organization are dead, I know. Jinwoo looked at his second in command, his friend of 15 years. But maybe it's time someone survived the exit. That's suicide. Chen will come for you. The Italians will sense weakness. Every enemy you've ever made will see their chance. Let them come. Jinwoo's voice went hard. I've been building this empire for 20 years. I think I can defend it long enough to burn it down myself. And then what? You think you can just walk away and play house? Be a normal father to those kids? I don't know. But I know I can't keep being this. He gestured at himself, at the car, at the armed men who followed him everywhere. Not if I want to know them. Really know them. Marcus shook his head. You're going to get yourself killed. And possibly them too. Not if I do this right. There is no right way to do this. Then I'll have to invent one. He had 1 week. 1 week to figure out how to dismantle an empire without bringing it down on the people he loved. 1 week to find a way to be both the man he was and the father he needed to become. 1 week to choose between the kingdom he'd built and the family he'd never known he wanted. His phone buzzed. A text from Amara. Saturday, same park, same time. Don't be late. Jinwoo smiled despite everything. A real smile that felt foreign on his face. He had 1 week to save his soul. And he was going to start by showing up for his children. Saturday came wrapped in autumn light. Golden, fleeting, precious. Jinwoo arrived at the park early again, this time carrying something he'd spent 2 days choosing. 3 small gift bags, each one carefully selected for children he barely knew, but desperately wanted to understand. Amara saw him first. She stood near the swings, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. When their eyes met, something passed between them. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. They were here. They were trying. You came, she said as he approached. I said I would. You've said a lot of things over the years. The barb landed softly, but it still cut. I know. But I'm here now. That has to count for something. Before she could respond, 3 small bodies came racing over. David reached him first, stopping just short, assessing. Michael followed, quieter, watching. Arya hung back with her mother, suddenly shy. You're the man from before, David announced. The one with sad eyes. I am. Are you still sad? Jinwoo crouched down to their level, something that felt both natural and terrifying. A little less today. Why? Because I get to see you. David considered this with that too-old wisdom. Mommy says you're her friend from a long time ago. That's right. But friends don't usually make people look the way Mommy looked when she saw you. Like she was happy and scared at the same time. Jinwoo's eyes found Amara's. She was looking away, her jaw tight. But he saw the truth in her posture. She was happy and scared, just like him. Sometimes grown-up friendships are complicated, Amara interjected gently. Everything grown up is complicated, Michael said quietly, his first words, and they carried unexpected weight. Jinwoo smiled. You're right about that. He held up the gift bags. I brought you something. Is that okay? Amara hesitated, then nodded. The children descended with the particular excitement of 5-year-olds who'd been promised presents. David got a science kit. Jinwoo had remembered Amara saying he had focus, had guessed curiosity. Michael received a sketchbook and expensive colored pencils. Something in his quiet observation suggested an artist's soul. Arya got a children's book about brave princesses, illustrated beautifully. These are perfect, Amara breathed, surprise evident in her voice. How did you... I paid attention to what you said about them, to what I saw. For a moment, the walls between them lowered. She looked at him like she used to, like he was a man who could be good, not just a man who chose to be dangerous. Thank you, she said softly. The children scattered to explore their gifts, and Jinwoo found himself standing beside Amara in comfortable silence. He wanted to ask her everything. 5 years of questions, 5 years of missing her. But instead he just watched his children be children. They're incredible, he said finally. They are. They're everything good I could give them. You did this alone. I had to. I know. I understand why now. I hate it, but I understand it. She looked at him then, really looked at him. Jinwoo, what are you doing? Why are you here? Learning how to be human again. You can't be human in your world. You know that. Maybe I need a different world. Her eyes widened. Don't say things you don't mean. Don't give us hope if you're just going to disappear again into your empire. I'm not disappearing, not this time. You say that now. But when your world demands you choose, I'm choosing them. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing this." He gestured at the park, at their children laughing and playing, at the life she'd built. "Whatever it takes. It takes everything, Jinwoo. It takes walking away from power, from control, from everything you are. Then maybe everything I am needs to change." Arya ran over, tugging on his sleeve with small, fearless hands. "Mr. Park, will you push me on the swing?" He looked down at his daughter, and felt his heart crack open completely. "I'd love to." As he pushed Arya higher and higher, her delighted squeals filling the air, he caught Amara watching him with tears in her eyes. She quickly wiped them away, but he'd seen them. She still loved him. Despite everything. Despite the 5 years, and the pain, and the impossible situation. She still loved him. And that made everything. The danger, the sacrifice, the war he was about to start with his own world, worth it. Because love was supposed to be worth dying for. He just never believed it until now. The engagement party was a declaration of war dressed in champagne and silk. Jinwoo stood in his penthouse, adjusting his tie in the mirror, and saw a ghost staring back. This man in the expensive suit, this crime lord with blood on his hands and power in his veins. He didn't recognize him anymore. 3 visits to the park. 3 afternoons watching his children play, learning their laughs, memorizing their smiles. 3 chances to see Amara slowly soften toward him, to feel the possibility of something he'd thought was dead. And tonight, he was supposed to cement his engagement to a woman he didn't love, to secure an alliance that would keep him trapped in darkness forever. His phone buzzed. "Marcus. Cars are ready. Chen's people are already arriving. You sure about this?" Jinwoo wasn't sure about anything anymore, but he typed back, "On my way." The venue was spectacular, a historic mansion overlooking the city, filled with everyone who mattered in their world. Legitimate businessmen who weren't legitimate, politicians who'd been bought years ago, families whose money came from blood, and always would. Yuna stood at the center of it all, beautiful and cold in a white dress that looked like a wedding gown. When she saw Jinwoo, she smiled, but it was her father's smile. Calculating. Victorious. "There's my fiancé," she said, taking his arm possessively. "I was beginning to think you'd gotten cold feet. Just late. You're never late. Not for anything that matters." The implication hung between them. She mattered, and he'd been late anyway. Chen approached with several associates, all powerful men who'd built empires on other people's suffering. "Jinwoo, good to see you made the right choice." "Did I?" Chen's expression hardened. "Don't test me. Not tonight." The evening progressed in a blur of forced congratulations and strategic conversations. Jinwoo played his part perfectly. The devoted fiancé, the shrewd businessman, the powerful crime lord who had everything under control. But inside, he was screaming. At 10 p.m., he stepped onto the balcony for air. The city sprawled below. His kingdom, his prison, his past. Somewhere out there, Amara was putting their children to bed, reading them stories, kissing their foreheads, living a life he'd never be part of if he stayed on this path. Beautiful, isn't it? Yuna had followed him outside. All of this, everything will control together. Control isn't the same as living. For people like us, it's better. Living is messy. Control is clean. He turned to face her. "Is that really what you want? A clean, controlled marriage with no mess, no feeling, no real connection? I want power. I want security. I want to know that every decision is strategic." She stepped closer. "What I don't want is to be humiliated by a husband who's in love with someone else." "Then why are you here? Why go through with this?" "Because my father's right. Sentiment is poison, and I'm not weak enough to drink it. That's not strength, Yuna. That's just fear. And you're not afraid. of what walking away will cost you. He was terrified, but for the first time, he was more afraid of staying than leaving. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You deserve someone who can give you what you want. But that's not me. Not anymore." Her eyes widened. "You're really going to do this? You're going to throw everything away?" "I'm going to try to build something real, something that matters beyond power and control. They'll kill you. My father, the Italians, everyone you've ever crossed, they'll all come for you. Let them. And your children, your precious Amara, what happens to them when your enemies use them to destroy you?" That was the question that haunted him. The impossible equation. How to protect his family while dismantling everything that made him powerful enough to protect them. "I'll find a way." "There is no way, Jinwoo. Don't you see? You lost the moment you fell in love with her. You lost the moment those children were born. Because now you have something to lose. And in our world, that's fatal." She was right. He knew she was right. But he also knew he couldn't spend the rest of his life hiding from love because he was afraid of loss. "Tell your father I'm done. With the engagement, with the alliance, with all of it. He'll destroy you. He can try." Jinwoo walked back inside, past the shocked guests, past Chen's murderous glare, past the life he'd built over 20 years of sacrifice and blood. He walked out the door and didn't look back. In his car, Marcus was waiting. "Where to, boss?" Jinwoo gave him an address in Riverside. "And Marcus, start preparing the contingencies. Everything we discussed. It's time. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. Then you better pray your plan works. Because if it doesn't, we're all dead." Jinwoo smiled. A real smile. Maybe the first in years. Better to die trying to live than to live already dead. The drive to Riverside felt like crossing between worlds. From towers of glass and steel to modest neighborhoods with actual families. From power to possibility. When he knocked on Amara's door at midnight, she opened it in pajamas, confusion and worry on her face. "Jinwoo, what?" "I broke off the engagement. I'm walking away from everything. And I need you to know that whatever happens next, I choose this. I choose you. I choose them." Her hand flew to her mouth, tears already forming. "Are you insane? They'll come after us." "I know. Which is why I need you to trust me. I have a plan. It's dangerous and complicated and might not work, but it's our only chance." "Our chance at what?" He took her hands, feeling the warmth of her skin against his. "At being a family. A real one. Without the shadows." "Jinwoo, you can't just... There's no way to... Let me try. Please. Let me try to be the man you needed me to be 5 years ago." She searched his face, looking for lies or false promises, but all she saw was truth. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." He kissed her then, soft, desperate, full of 5 years of longing. And for just a moment, he believed they might actually survive this. The war came swift and brutal. Chen struck within days, burning Jinwoo's businesses, turning allies, spreading word that the mighty crime lord had fallen for a woman and her children. The attacks were surgical, meant to destroy everything. But Jinwoo had been ready. For months, he'd moved assets, secured loyalties, built his exit. With Marcus's help, he orchestrated the impossible, dismantling his empire before anyone else could. The FBI took the bait. Marcus reported from the safe house where Amara and the children hid. Chen's finished. And us? Immunity, protection, new lives. Marcus paused. "It's really over, boss." 3 months later, Jinwoo Park ceased to exist. James Park taught high school in a quiet Oregon town. He walked his children to school without bodyguards, helped with homework instead of handling territory disputes, kissed his wife goodnight without checking for threats. Daddy, read us a story? Arya called one evening. Daddy. The word still made his heart stop. He settled between his 3 children, their small bodies pressed against his, and began to read. Outside, his old world spun on without him. Chen would rebuild, others would rise. The shadows would always need rulers. But Jinwoo was free. That night, Amara found him on the porch, watching stars. Do you miss it? She asked. The power? He pulled her close. I miss nothing, because I finally have everything. She smiled against his chest. You built an empire on fear, and I traded it for this, for you, for them. He kissed her forehead. Best deal I ever made. Inside, David's voice called out, Dad, we need you. Dad. Jinwoo went to his children, leaving the crime lord behind forever. He'd spent 20 years building an empire of darkness. But this love, this family, this ordinary beautiful life, was the only empire worth having, the only one he'd ever truly rule. The end.